Peterson. And joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer, Class 1, Virginia Morris. We warmly welcome Wing Commander Dr. Mary Ann Whiting, representing the Air Force Association. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services Leagues of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. If you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's first World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed at the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record that they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament. Flowers of the forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Pilot Officer Lindsay Samuel Fairclough, who was killed during the Second World War. Lindsay Fairclough was born on the 15th of July 1923 in Midlands, Western Australia, to Samuel and Margaret Fairclough. He had a sister, Lois, and three brothers, Graham, George and Geoffrey. Their father was a blacksmith. Lindsay attended the Southern Cross State School and after found work as a messenger before becoming an apprentice stereotyper in the printing trade with Lamps and Paragon. On the 12th of October 1941, Fairclough enlisted in the Royal Australian Air Force at the age of 18. He trained as a pilot and in October 1942, having received his wings, he was made sergeant. Fairclough embarked for overseas service from Melbourne on the 30th of November 1942, arriving in Britain the following February. As part of the Empire Air Training Scheme, he was one of almost 27.5 Royal Australian Air Force pilots, navigators, wireless operators, air gunners and flight engineers who joined Australian and British squadrons in Britain throughout the course of the war. Further specialist training followed in England, and in April 1943, Fairclough was promoted to Flight Sergeant. That December, he was made Pilot Officer, and on the last day of 1943, he was posted to No. 463 Squadron, RAAF. As part of a bomber command, the squadron flew the 4-engine Arvo Lancaster heavy bomber. On the evening of the 30th of January, 1944, Bomber Command launched a bombing raid on Berlin. Pilot Officer Fairclough was the pilot of Lancaster JJ, which took off from the Royal Australian Air Force Base at Waddington shortly after 5 p.m. They met with heavy resistance from the enemy over the target. Fairclough's Lancaster was attacked by a night fighter that put the intercom out of action and set fire to 3 of the engines. The Lancaster exploded and crashed near Lutgendorf, about 120 kilometres northwest of Berlin. Bomb armour Flight Sergeant Peter Giles was knocked unconscious by the explosion and thrown clear of the aircraft. He regained consciousness in mid-air and managed to land safely, but was captured a week later. He was the only survivor. Those killed in the crash with Pilot Officer Lindsay Samuel Fairclough were fellow Australian Flight Sergeants Leonard Carrius, Alan White and John McLean, along with British Sergeants Norman Verner and Dennis Robinson. After the war, the remains of Commonwealth servicemen buried in Europe were examined and identified where possible. The bodies of Fairclough and his crewmates were located, but only one could be identified. The unknown were reinterred in a communal grave at the Berlin Second World War Cemetery. Lindsay Fairclough was 20 years old. He was dearly missed by his family and friends and colleagues back home, who all placed in memorial notices in the newspapers for years after his death. One, inserted by his uncle and aunt, read, "God takes our loved ones from our homes, but never from our hearts." Pilot Officer Lindsay Fairclough's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photo is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Pilot Officer Lindsay Samuel Fairclough, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post-ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.